The Bermuda Triangle is an area of believed supernatural phenomena off the coast of Florida that extends southeast of Puerto Rico and north to Bermuda, and what happened within its boundaries on the evening of December 5, 1945, is a question that has befuddled, entertained, and tormented both skeptics and believers in the Triangle for decades. Just 2 days shy of the 4th anniversary of the attack on Pearl Harbor, barely 3 months after the end of World War II, and 20 days shy of Christmas, the U.S. Navy would find itself struggling to deal with yet another disaster. This one was smaller in scale compared to Pearl Harbor and the war that followed, but much more confounding in nature. Since 1930, more than 325 planes and 1,200 ships have disappeared, crashed, or sunk into the Bermuda Triangle, which is an area roughly the size of Alaska. Among them are 5 U.S. Navy Avenger airplanes that left the Fort Lauderdale Naval Air Station on a routine training mission over the Bahamas. The 5 pilots and 9 crewmen of Flight 19 were operating General Motors TBM Avenger torpedo bombers out of Naval Air Station Fort Lauderdale, Florida. They were led by Instructor Lieutenant Charles Taylor and were to practice bombing and low-level strafing on small coral shoals 60 miles east of the naval station. TBM-3, Bureau Number 23307, Squadron Number FT-28, was piloted by Lieutenant Charles Carroll Taylor, U.S. Naval Reserve. Walter Reed Parpart, Aviation Radioman 3rd Class, U.S. Naval Reserve, was his radioman, while George Devlin, Aviation Ordnanceman 3rd Class, U.S. Naval Reserve, was his gunner. TBM-1E, Bureau Number 46094, Squadron Number FT-36, was piloted by Captain Edward Joseph Powers, Jr., U.S. Marine Corps. Staff Sergeant Howell Orrin Thompson, U.S. Marine Corps Reserve, was his gunner, and Staff Sergeant George Richard Peonessa, U.S. Marine Corps, served as his radioman. TBM-1C, Bureau Number 73209, Squadron Number FT-117, was piloted by Captain George William Stivers, U.S. Marine Corps. Private Robert Peter Grubel, U.S. Marine Corps Reserve, served as radioman, and Sergeant Robert Francis Gallivan, U.S. Marine Corps, served as gunner. TBM-1C, Bureau Number 45714, Squadron Number FT-3, was piloted by Ensign Joseph Tipton Bossy, U.S. Naval Reserve. Seaman First Class Herman Arthur Thielander, U.S. Naval Reserve, served as his gunner, and Seaman First Class Burt Edward Ballock, Jr., also U.S. Naval Reserve, served as radioman. Lastly was TBM-1C, Bureau Number 46325, Squadron Number FT-81, was piloted by 2nd Lieutenant Forrest James Gerber, U.S. Marine Corps. Private First Class William Earl Lightfoot, U.S. Marine Corps, was his only authorized aircrew passenger. Corporal Alan Costner, who was also slated for the flight, had asked to be excused from this exercise, a seemingly minor decision that would prove far more substantial soon after. Taylor, Powers, Stivers, Gerber, and Bossy were qualified naval aviators. Taylor, the assigned instructor in charge of Flight 19, was an aviator whose flight log indicates a total of 2,509.3 hours flying time. He served approximately 1 year as a scout pilot based at Key West, Florida, and had completed a recent combat tour as a carrier-based torpedo plane pilot attached to the aircraft carrier USS Hancock. Prior to their instruction in VTB-type advanced training on December 5th, Stivers, Powers, Gerber, and Bossy had completed the required ground training syllabus for VTB-type advanced training. Also prior to undergoing advanced combat aircrew training in VTB-type aircraft that December 5th, Parpart, Thompson, Peonessa, Grubel, Gallivan, Lightfoot, Thielander, and Ballock had also completed the ground training syllabus for VTB-type advanced training. The 5 Avengers were thoroughly pre-flighted. All survival gear was intact, fuel tanks were full, and instruments were checked. However, one mechanic commented that none of the aircraft had a clock. Inside the training office, the students of Flight 19 waited for their briefing. They were going to be late. Takeoff time was set for 13:45 hours or 1:45 p.m., and the instructor had yet to show up. At 13:15 hours or 1:15 p.m., Lieutenant Taylor arrived. It was his first time on this particular syllabus hop. He had only recently arrived from Naval Air Station Miami, where he had also been a VTB-type instructor. Interestingly enough, Taylor asked the aviation training duty officer to find another instructor to take his place. He stated simply that he did not want to take this one out. His request was denied. To the anxiously waiting students, it was the 3rd and final navigational problem. The previous 2 had been in the same general area, and now they were anxious to complete the phase. It would be their last practice before graduation. Then the briefing began. The weather for the area of the problem was described as, quote, favorable. December 5th was a warm day with billowing clouds soaring overhead in the current of a gusting southwest trade wind. The temperature was 67 degrees. The general weather conditions were considered average for training flights of this nature, except for showers. In the words of the training duty officer who attended the briefing, quote, the aerologist sends us a report in the morning. If weather conditions are unfavorable, he will inform us and tell us about the condition. In the absence of any further information, I consider the weather favorable. This estimate was later confirmed by another TBM training flight performing the same problem an hour earlier. It should be noted here that Flight 19 was simply called such because there were other training squadrons that had gone before it that day, such as Flight 17, Flight 18, etc. The weather was favorable, the state of the sea, moderate to rough. Navigation problem number 1, the organized overwater navigation training flight assigned to Flight 19, was as follows. 1. Depart 26 degrees, 3 minutes north and 80 degrees, 7 minutes west, and fly 91 degrees, distance 56 miles to Hen and Chicken Shoals to conduct low-level glide bombing practice. After bombing, continue on course 91 degrees for 67 miles. 2. Fly course 346 degrees, distance 73 miles. 3. Fly course 241 degrees, distance 120 miles to practice mapping, then return southwest to U.S. Naval Air Station, Fort Lauderdale, Florida. The entire flight, which air station pilots took 3 or 4 times a day, should have lasted 3 hours. It was a triangular route. Flight 19 departed from U.S. Naval Air Station, Fort Lauderdale, Florida, at approximately 14:10 hours, 2:10 p.m. on the afternoon of December 5, 1945, and rose into the sunny sky above. Turning east, the formation headed over the Atlantic on the first leg of their routine exercise, expected to take 2 hours. They were led by one of the students. The instructor, whose call sign was Foxterra 28, FT28, flew at the rear in a tracking position. Expected to return by 17:23 hours, 5:23 p.m., the TBMs had enough fuel to remain in the air for 5 to 5.5 hours. Hens and Chicken Shoals, commonly called Chicken Rocks, the point at which they would conduct low-level bombing, was only 56 miles away in the waters of the Bahamas. If they cruised at 150 miles per hour, they would have arrived at the shoals in about 20 minutes. Slating half an hour for bombing practice, they would have then continued on the final 67 miles of the first leg. Around that time, back at Fort Lauderdale, the tower picked up chatter from Flight 19. "I've got one more bomb. Go ahead and drop it," was the response. A fishing boat captain working near the target area remembers seeing the airplanes flying east at approximately 1500 hours or 3 p.m. If the flight flew the rest of the first leg and then changed to course 346, they would have been near Great Seal Key by 1540 hours or 3:40 p.m. However, at about that time, FT-74, Lieutenant Cox, the senior flight instructor at Fort Lauderdale, was joining up his squadron around the field when he heard what he assumed were either some boats or aircraft in distress. Quote, one man was transmitting on 4805 to Powers. The voice asked Powers what his compass read a number of times, and finally Powers replied, "I don't know where we are. We must have got lost after that last turn." The communications between Flight 19, Lieutenant Taylor, call sign FT-28, Fort Lauderdale, Port Everglades, and Senior Flight Instructor Lieutenant Cox, call sign FT-74, are as follows. Note: Lieutenant Robert F. Cox, U.S. Navy, at approximately 1600 hours or 4 p.m. on the 5th of December 1945, while piloting FT-74 in the vicinity of U.S. Naval Air Station at Fort Lauderdale, Florida, established communication with FT-28, which was supposedly in the Florida Keys. He experienced a fading radio signal from FT-28. Air Sea Rescue Task Unit No. 4 at Port Everglades, Florida, was also aware of the difficulty of FT-28 at approximately 1600 hours. By this time, the weather conditions were getting progressively worse as the evening wore on. 1545 hours, 3:45 p.m., FT-74. Foxterra 74, Foxterra 74 to Nanhao Able 1, Nanhao Able 1. There seems to be either a boat or a plane lost and is calling Powers. Suggest you inform Tower of it, over. Fort Lauderdale. Nanhao Able 1, roger. FT-74. This is Foxtrot 74, plane or boat calling Powers. Please identify yourself so someone can help you.
Fort Lauderdale.
Nanhao Able 1 to FT-74. Tower asks if they have any recognition or identification. Do they have any recognition?
FT-74.
Negative. Not as yet known.
Note: U.S. Naval Air Station Fort Lauderdale learned at 16:11 hours, 4:11 p.m. that FT-28 was uncertain of his position. 16:11 hours, 4:11 p.m. Unknown.
Does anyone have any suggestions? I think we must be over the Keys.
FT-74.
This is FT-74 calling lost plane or boats. Please identify yourself. Over.
Unknown.
Roger. This is MT-28.
FT-74.
MT-28, this is FT-74. What is your trouble?
MT-28.
Both my compasses are out, and I'm trying to find Fort Lauderdale, Florida. I'm over land, but it's broken. I'm sure I'm in the Keys, but I don't know how far down, and I don't know how to get to Fort Lauderdale.
FT-74.
MT-28, this is FT-74. Put the sun on your port wing if you are in the Keys and fly up the coast until you get to Miami. Then Fort Lauderdale is 20 miles further, your first port after Miami. The air station is directly on your left from the port. What is your present altitude? I will south and meet you.
MT-28.
I know where I'm at now. I'm at 2,300 feet. Don't come after me.
FT-74.
MT-28, Roger. I'm coming up to meet you anyhow.
Fort Lauderdale.
FT-74, this is Nanhao Able 1. Is the call sign of your contact MT-28 or FT-28?
FT-74.
MT-28, this is FT-74. Please verify. Are you MT-28 or FT-28? Over.
FT-28.
Roger, that's FT-28. FT-74, can you have Miami or someone turn on their radar gear and pick us up? We don't seem to be getting far. We were out on a navigational hop, and on the second leg I thought they were going wrong, so I took over and was flying them back to the right position. But I'm sure now that neither one of my compasses are working.
FT-74.
FT-28, you can't expect to get here in 10 minutes. You have a 30 to 35 knot head or crosswind. Turn on your emergency IFF gear. Or do you have it on?
FT-28.
Negative.
FT-74.
Nanhao Able 1, this is FT-74. Flight of 5 planes, leader is FT-28. He has his emergency IFF equipment on. Request if he can be picked up on Fort Lauderdale radar gear.
Fort Lauderdale.
FT-74, Nanhao Able 1, negative. He cannot be picked up on Fort Lauderdale radar gear.
16:22 hours, 4:22 p.m. FT-74.
Roger, stand by.
FT-74.
FT-28, this is FT-74. Turn on your ZBX. FT-28, do you read? Turn on your ZBX.
Fort Lauderdale.
FT-74, this is Nanhao Able 1. Tell FT-28 to have a pilot with a good compass take over lead. Over.
FT-74.
Roger. FT-28, this is FT-74. Have a wingman with a good compass take over lead of flight. Over.
FT-28.
Radar.
FT-74.
FT-28, your transmissions are fading. Something is wrong. What is your altitude?
FT-28.
I am at 4,500 feet.
FT-74.
Nanhao Able 1, this is FT-74. He is now on a new heading. Angles 4.5 and climbing.
Port Everglades.
Nanhao Able 3 to FT-28. This is the time for all good men to come to the aid of their country. Can you read us?
Note: the YG homing device at U.S. Naval Air Station Fort Lauderdale, Florida, was functioning properly at approximately 16:25 hours, 4:25 p.m. on 5th of December 1945. 16:25 hours, 4:25 p.m. FT-28.
Affirmative. We've just passed over Small Island. We have no other land in sight. Visibility is 10 to 12 miles.
16:26 hours, 4:26 p.m. FT-28.
I am at angles 3.5. Have on emergency IFF. Does anybody in the area have a radar screen that could pick us up?
Port Everglades.
FT-28, this is Nanhao Able 3. Suggest you have another plane in your flight with a good compass take over the lead and guide you back to the mainland.
FT-28.
Roger.
Unknown.
If we would just fly west, we would get home.
Unknown. Damn it, if we would just fly west, we would get home.
FT28.
FT28 to Nanhao Able 3. One of the planes in the flight thinks if we went 270, we could hit land.
Note: the Joint Operations Center of the Gulf Sea Frontier Air Sea Rescue Organization was aware of the difficulty of FT28 at approximately 1630 hours, 4:30 p.m. on December 5, 1945. 1640 hours, 4:40 p.m. FT28.
We went out on a heading of 120. On the second leg of the hop, I took over because I thought they were going wrong. But now I know it's my compasses that were wrong.
1642 hours, 4:42 p.m. Port Everglades.
Nanhao Able 3 to FT28, do you have a YG disc for homing DF?
1644 hours, 4:44 p.m. Fort Lauderdale to Gulf Sea FHF-DFN.
Monitor 4805 for plane FT28, plane lost on East Coast, Florida.
NAS Pensacola.
Roger.
Homa.
Roger.
Jupiter.
Roger.
Miami.
If you hear him or FT74, alert the net.
1645 hours, 4:45 p.m. FT28.
FT28 to Nanhao Able 3, we are heading 030 for 45 minutes, then we will fly north to make sure we are not over the Gulf of Mexico.
1646 hours, 4:46 p.m. Port Everglades.
Nanhao Able 1 to FT28, please turn on your ZBX. Repeat, turn on your ZBX. Over.
Note: at 1647 hours, 4:47 p.m., 5th of December 1945, the Gulf Sea Frontier and Eastern Sea Frontier HF/DF nets were alerted to obtain all possible bearings on transmissions from FT28, who was transmitting on 4805 kilocycles. 1652 hours, Port Everglades.
Nanhao Able 3 to FT28, please turn on your ZBX. Repeat, please turn on ZBX.
1656 hours, 4:56 p.m. Port Everglades.
Nanhao Able 3 to any Foxterra in flight with Foxterra 28. Turn on your ZBX. Over.
1704 hours, 5:04 p.m. FT28.
All planes in this flight join up in close formation.
FT28.
How long have we gone now?
Unknown. 1705 hours, 5:05 p.m. FT28.
Let's turn and fly east 2 degrees. We are going too damn far north instead of east. If there is anything, we wouldn't see it.
1707 hours, 5:07 p.m. FT28.
FT28 to all planes in flight, change course to 90 degrees for 10 minutes.
1711 hours, 5:11 p.m. FT28.
We didn't get far enough east. How long have we been going east?
1712 hours, 5:12 p.m. FT28.
Hello, Nanhao Able 3. This is FT28. Do you read? Over.
Port Everglades.
Roger. This is Nanhao Able 3. Go ahead.
Unknown. Possibly powers.
I receive you very weak. We're now flying 270 degrees.
Port Everglades.
Roger.
1716 hours, 5:16 p.m. FT28.
We will fly 270 degrees until we hit the beach or run out of gas.
1719 hours, 5:19 p.m. FT28.
Planes fly close formation. When first man gets down to 10 gallons of gas, we will all land in the water together. Does everyone understand that?
1720 hours, 5:20 p.m. Port Everglades.
Nanhao Able 3 to FT28, if you can change to yellow band 3000 kilocycles, please do so and give us a call.
1722 hours, 5:22 p.m. FT28.
Nanhao Able 3, this is Foxterra 28.
Port Everglades.
This is Nanhao Able 3, shift to 3000 kilocycles.
1724 hours, 5:24 p.m. FT28.
I receive you very weak. How is weather over Lauderdale?
Port Everglades.
FT28, this is Nanhao Able 3. Weather over Lauderdale, clear. Over Key West, CAVU. Over the Bahamas, cloudy, rather low ceiling, poor visibility.
1730 hours,
5:30 p.m. FT28.
Is that a ship on the left?
Unknown. Possibly Powers. 17:33 hours, 5:33 p.m. FT28.
Nano Able 3, can you hear me?
Port Everglades.
Hear you, Strength 3. Modulation good.
17:34 hours, 5:34 p.m. Port Everglades.
Nano Able 3 to FT28, can you shift to 3000 kcs? Over. FT28, please change to 3000 kcs. Shift to 3000 kcs. Over.
17:40 hours, 5:40 p.m. FT28.
Nano Able 3, how do you read?
Port Everglades.
Very weak. Change to 3000 kilocycles.
17:50 hours, 5:50 p.m. FT28.
Hello, Nano Able 3. This is FT28. I can hear you very faintly. My transmission is getting weaker.
FT28.
Hello, Nano Able 3. This is FT28. Over.
Port Everglades.
Change to yellow band channel 1, 3000 kilocycles, and give us a call.
FT28.
My transmission is getting weaker.
17:53 hours, 5:53 p.m. Port Everglades.
Change to yellow band 3000 kilocycles and say words twice when answering.
17:54 hours, 5:54 p.m. Port Everglades.
Nano Able 3 to FT28. Do you receive my last transmission? Change to channel 1, 3000 kilocycles.
FT28.
Repeat once again.
17:55 hours, 5:55 p.m. Port Everglades.
Change to channel 1, 3000 kilocycles.
FT28.
I cannot change frequency. I must keep my planes intact.
Unknown.
We may have to ditch any minute.
Note: at 1800 hours, 5th of December 1945, an approximate HF-DF fix was obtained on FT28, placing FT28 within a 100-mile radius of 29 degrees 15 minutes north, 79 degrees 00 minutes west, at 17:50 hours, 5:50 p.m. 18:02 hours, 6:02 p.m. FT28.
Hello, Powers? Do you read me?
18:03 hours, 6:03 p.m. FT28.
Hello, Powers. This is Do you read me? Over.
18:04 hours, 6:04 p.m. Powers.
Roger, I read you.
FT28.
Hello, Powers. I have been trying to reach you.
Powers.
I thought you were calling base.
FT28.
Negative. What course are we on?
Powers.
Holding course 270.
FT28.
Affirmative. I'm pretty sure we are over the Gulf of Mexico. We didn't go far enough east. How long have we been on this course?
Powers.
About 45 minutes.
18:06 hours, 6:06 p.m. FT28.
I suggest we fly due east until we run out of gas. We have a better chance of being picked up close to shore. If we were near land, we should be able to see a light or something. Are you listening? We may just as well turn around and go east again.
18:07 hours, 6:07 p.m. Port Everglades.
Nano Able 3 to FT28. Do you read me?
Note: the 1750-hour HF-DF evaluated position was telephoned to the tower at U.S. Naval Air Station Fort Lauderdale at about 18:10 hours, 6:10 p.m., 5th of December 1945. 18:13 hours, 6:13 p.m. Port Everglades.
Nano Able 3 to FT28. Do you read me? 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
18:17 hours, 6:17 p.m. FT28.
Hello, Powers?
FT28.
Powers, what is your course?
Note: at 8:20 hours, 6:20 p.m., an Air Sea Rescue Dumbo was airborne from Coast Guard Air Station Dinner Key, Florida, to attempt to regain communications with the planes of Flight 19 on 4805 kilocycles. The 1750-hour HFDF evaluated position was transmitted on the Gulf Sea Frontier and Eastern Sea Frontier HFDF teletype nets and Air Sea Rescue teletype net of the Gulf Sea Frontier at approximately 1836 hours, 6:36 p.m. on the 5th of December, 1945. 1837 hours, 6:37 p.m. FT28.
What course are we on now?
FT28.
Foxtrot 3, Foxtrot 3.
1844 hours, 6:44 p.m. Port Everglades.
FT3, this is NaNoWable 3. Come in, please. We are reading you very weak. Come in, please.
1904 hours, 7:04 p.m. Port Everglades.
Foxtrot 3, Foxtrot 3, Foxtrot 3.
Unknown. Note: according to the senior instructor's later testimony, quote, as his transmissions were fading, he must have been going away north as I headed south. I believe at the time of his first transmission, he was either over the Biminis or Bahamas. I was about 40 miles south of Fort Lauderdale and couldn't hear him any longer. Lieutenant Cox wanted to search for the squadron at this point, but was told not to by NASFL officials who feared losing another pilot. An interesting note is that the control tower officials at NAS Fort Lauderdale had a, quote, ready plane to search at the last transmission location, but they decided to ground all planes. Note: the Air Sea Rescue Dumbo from Dinner Key Coast Guard Air Station was unsuccessful in its endeavor to contact Flight 19. All 5 aircraft were officially unaccounted for at about 1900 hours, 7 p.m.